I'm going to offer a very quick comment, and the comment is when we vote for the lesser, how do I want to say this?
We still get evil.
Right, but no, it's when we vote for the lesser of two evils, we get the evil of two lessers. It's the same thing. And the other one that was really important to me and actually helped me move off voting for the evil of two lessers is, I don't know who said this, but the quote was, I'd rather ask for something I want and not get it than ask for something I don't want and get it. So let's ask for what we want.
Hi, I want to say thank you to each one of you. I'm Marianne Grady Flores, and I had just a footnote to what you had shared earlier today, Jill, about Cuba. I wanted to just expand a little bit about what I learned from Richard Heinberg, Professor Richard Heinberg from New College, a geologist, and how he shared about the transition and the choices that Cuba had made. One was to say, we're going to stick, since they had been reduced to a dribble of 5% of their original petroleum use, they decided, let's stick with that. Let's figure out how we can survive on that. And they've done it. And some of the examples that we know, Richard described how in that health crisis of not having food production because they were lacking the petroleum fertilizers and stuff. It took 7 years to reintroduce the microorganisms that it took to have organic foods. And so the total population lost in its actual weight, and thus the health benefits that you mentioned before. The other thing was they made a choice because of their lack of petroleum and lack of ability to transport agriculture products. They decided to do victory gardens, and so 70% of the food was produced within the urban areas. The other thing was to diversify the campuses of the universities. Instead of having 3 main campuses throughout the island, they have now 57. And so, thinking globally but acting locally was the whole premise. And so that's one thing. The other thing, I wanted to just, I'm so grateful for all of the different thoughts and the synthesis that you bring us today. I was thinking about Bishop Gumbleton's describing how, in yesterday's sharing, he talked about how if we don't acknowledge a sin from the past, then it will continue its trajectory into the future and will be magnified. And so I was thinking about in our dialogue and in our sharing, I think it's critical in our analysis that we always begin with the analysis of, just being here, it's overwhelming me thinking about whose land we're sitting in right now, the Mohawk people, a part of the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois Confederacy. And I had walked into the museum and I saw the exhibit. Well, first of all, I don't want to say it as if we need to look in a museum. There are people living today, like Oren Lyons, like the mothers, the clan mothers, who are incredible resources to teach us as to how to respect one another, to live, to be called to live in balance and harmony with one another. And so these folks are living among us today and can be our teachers as well. And also, I've been asked to include too the sin not only of the genocide of our First Nations, but also the sin of slavery. And where are we today as a result of that sin? And so we need to, I think it's critical that we include the murder of Michael Brown and the outcry and the movement on the streets today as a result of his murder and how deeply that touches so many of our disenfranchised, and yet re-empowering African American communities and the communities of the poor and those that have been imprisoned.
I don't want to.
No, that's okay. So I just feel like we need to include those 2 points of beginning in our trajectory, and that all war making is coming back through the militarization of the police, as you see in the videos of Michael Brown's, the protests on his behalf.
So true. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Do you want to say something?
Is this working? I want to say, first of all, thank you to Marianne, who is facing a year behind bars for taking photographs of nonviolent demonstrators exercising their supposed constitutional rights, and for wearing a sky blue scarf, which our friends in Afghanistan have put forth as a symbol of all living under the same sky, which should not have weapons of war in it. I wonder about celebrating a saint here who went over to the side of the invaders. I think we have to also, when we recognize the sin of slavery, recognize the sin of the Civil War, and do away with this madness that says, if you don't retroactively support the Civil War, then you retroactively support slavery. Because almost every nation that ended slavery did it without a Civil War. The idea that we had to have the Civil War in order to do it, and the resentment and the hostility and the bitterness and the ongoing celebration of the losing side of that Civil War, it would not be there. Civil rights would have come faster if it had been done non-violently through compensated emancipation or whatever. And I'm fully aware that the slave owners had no interest in that and they wanted a war. And I would just quickly, in terms of evils of lessers, note first of all that Elizabeth Warren should have somebody show her the federal budget. If she's going to support wars by the United States and Israel and want financial and economic justice, somebody should tell Bernie Sanders not to put out one press release cheering for bombs falling on Iraq and the same day put out another press release saying don't defund the post office. These are separate issues in polls, as Jill told us, but not in reality. And somebody like Hank Johnson, who, as far as I know, the Diebold Corporation elected to replace Cynthia McKinney, who was unacceptable, and who famously commented that the island of Guam might get too heavy on one end and tip over. And so you look at someone like this and wonder what he's doing there. But I asked him to sign on to impeach Bush and Cheney, and he said, sure, and did it. And he now has a bill, not yet introduced, your congressmember can be an original co-sponsor, that says no more weapons of war can go from the military to local police departments. And it's not every weapon, and War Resisters League says it's not good enough, but it's a step very much in the right direction. And your congressmember should call Hank Johnson's office and say, sign me on, this is madness, we don't want war zones in Missouri.
Okay.
I just loved your comments about Cuba and the Native Americans and African Americans. And I wanted to add, it's maddening to me that the extinction of the American Indians is so glossed over and pushed under the rug. Even on timelines of the wars, they're excluded. And if you actually look into the wars, there's barely a year when there wasn't a war against the Native Americans. And it was especially infuriating when I read Bush's national security strategy some years ago. And the idea was that, democracies rarely go to war with one another. This idea that's true. But again, ignoring that the United States was supposedly a democracy in the 1800s also, and there were all these wars against the Native Americans, as if they don't count. But I think the same attitudes, you mentioned the need to recognize a past sin in order to move on. And I think that's important because I think the same attitudes and goals that caused those wars are the same attitudes and goals causing the wars today.
Do you want to make a comment before I have to break for lunch? Okay.
Okay, my name is Cynthia Bannis, and I'm in the group with Mary Ann, who demonstrate peacefully at Hancock Field, and her family has been doing time. Listen, I'm aware of time. Yes, I am. No, well, listen, but now I forgot what I was saying. Oh, no, her family's been doing it for 3 generations. They're the ones who taught me somehow to be kind of peaceful. I'm still working on it, but anyway, I appreciated what you said about convergence, and I just want to give an example of it. Now, the Indigenous people and our work with the drones. In Chile, the Indigenous people, the Mapuche people, live way down in the south. And our lumber companies are killing some of those Indians because they want that wonderful wood that they can get there. And our country still accepts soldiers from Chile. The School of the Americas, there's a connection. And when we were there, we went to a drone base in Chile. And so it's all connected like that. And so I think that's very important. And then the next thing for this panel, what I try to do when I get discouraged is do some action. And I want to say another wonderful woman, Pat Powers, Presidente. She was one of us at Hancock. About 2 months ago, she died of cancer. She was a nurse and a musician, and she just treasured her nurse's certificate. It's a whole other story. And so in her memory, and in the memory of Victor Hara, Pete Seeger, and all the wonderful musicians, I'm going to pass these out, and it tells about what you can do to try to get this musician or the person who was responsible for Victor Hara's death extradited to Chile. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's about 10 after 1. So I assume we should be breaking for lunch. It's supposed to be soon at 2 for the third and final panel of the day. So I think that's probably what we should do. You got to say something. Oh, I'll give you another minute. All right. This is tough.
Sorry. Maureen said I should come up. So Maureen said, you know.
Yeah, I know what you said.
I just wanted to share, because some people might not know, that Peace Action New York State has a staff person who is focused on student organizing. And we do have new chapters that are beginning on the student campuses around New York State, quite a number of them now, including SUNY Albany. And we have the funding for it through an endowment, someone who had been very active in peace action and had the means when his wife died, set it up that there was like a $5,000 a year fund, something like that, or if I have that right, for a certain amount of years, or maybe it was $1,000 for 5 years, I don't know. But anyway, so each student organizer on the campus is cultivated by our state student staff person, and the person who is the student organizer on the local campus gets a stipend. So they have some incentive to work for the organization and build it. And it's now reaching the point where it's, you know, it's getting some momentum. It's still small, but the staff person actually asked us, should I keep doing this, because what if we don't have enough to feed all the stipends? So I'm just sharing that as for some optimism, and also a little bit of a way to cultivate young people. They want to run it themselves, but they're linked to us, so there's some interrelationship. We can go to their stuff, they can go to our stuff, and we can learn from each other. We actually had a conversation at one point at the state meeting of them helping us learn better Facebook and Twitter and all that.